Today is part one of the Christmas series that I'm doing from now until, well, Christmas. And we're starting the series off by doing a super simple recipe, and the reason that I want to do this is because I know that you guys are probably going to be going to a bunch of Christmas parties or a lot of get-togethers where you might be expected to bring something. So this is probably one of the easiest cake recipes in the world. So we're going to be starting this off with bundt cakes. Now, the reason that I absolutely love bundt cakes is because, one, they only require one pan. So you don't need to go buy 2-3 pans to make a cake. It only requires one pan. There's no layering or stacking, messing with all the icing in between. It's just super simple and easy. And in my opinion, it is the best cake to start out with as a beginner.
So let's get started making these two varieties of bundt cakes.
Alright, so for the first bundt cake, we are going to be making a classic red velvet cake. This is one of my favorite cakes, and I typically see it around Christmas time. It doesn't have very many Christmassy flavors going for it, but it's got a Christmas color, and I guess people freak out when they see red things at Christmas time. So we are going to be making a red velvet bundt cake.
Alright, so first you're going to need a bundt cake pan, and you want to grease this heavily with Crisco shortening. In my opinion, this is the best thing to prevent sticking. Grab your stand mixer, add the whisk attachment. To that, add a ½ cup of vegetable oil, followed up with ½ of a cup of filtered water, 2 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract, and 3 eggs that have been brought up to room temperature. Now just lower your stand mixer and give this a quick whisk to break up those eggs and incorporate. Next, I'm adding in a ¼ cup of mayo. I actually made mine myself, and you can look up a video for that if you don't have any on hand. Then add in 3/4 of a cup of full fat sour cream. Lower your stand mixer and whisk these ingredients together. Now we are going to grab a box of red velvet cake mix. I know some people want to make everything from scratch, but I'm offering 2 recipes today, and this is the easier one. So for you guys who want something quick and easy, we're going to be making a box cake mix recipe. So just add in your dry mix until it all comes together, whisking it in slowly, scrape down the sides as needed, and then you will eventually have a nice smooth red velvet cake batter just like you see here. So you're just going to add this into your cake pan until all of the batter is added. Place this in an oven that has been preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit and cook for 40 to 45 minutes until a toothpick inserted comes out clean. While your cake is cooking, let's make the frosting. So a ¼ cup of unsalted butter goes into our stand mixer with the paddle attachment, and just mix this around and be sure it's room temperature. Next, add in 8 ounces of full-fat cream cheese to your stand mixer and then drop it down. Mix the butter and cream cheese for 2 minutes on low until it is thoroughly combined. Raise your stand mixer and add in 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And while we have this up, we're going to add a little bit of our 2½ cups of powdered sugar, not all of it. Go ahead and mix that around for a little bit, and then just slowly add in this 2½ cups while this is mixing until it all comes together and forms a nice cream cheese style frosting that you see here. Now place your frosting in a plastic Ziploc bag or a piping bag if you have it, but I'm broke, so this is what I'm using. So I've let my cake cool for about 10 minutes in the pan, and now I'm taking either a spatula or knife like you see here, something flexible to just go around the edges and kind of help this cake loosen up. Mine was pretty loose, but be sure to do this. Now I'm going to flip my cake onto a wire rack using this maneuver here that you just saw, but you don't have to do it on a wire rack. You could probably go directly on a large plate, but I like to put mine on the wire rack just to ensure cooling. So now I'm using a knife to kind of help me lift this really slippery pan up, and then we're going to unveil our red velvet cake. Look at this thing, guys. It looks absolutely amazing, and I was very surprised by it. It came out great. Give it a quick karate check, make sure it can take the heat, and this one looks pretty good. Be sure your cake cools completely before frosting. So we're going to frost this. Now I tried to be fancy and make a Nothing Bundt Cake, which is a chain restaurant that specializes in these, but I kind of messed it up from the start, and then I kind of really messed it up here, so I said, you know what, I'm just going to frost this thing because one, you're going to get way more frosting this way, which I prefer any day over looks, but I'm not going to say that I specialize in decorating, okay? I'm here to make good food and make it taste good. Plus, we're doing our best the first time around. So, as you can see, I frosted this thing all the way around. And no, it's not the best looking thing in the world, but I promise you it tastes absolutely amazing.
Alright, for the second cake, we're going to be making a more Christmas time flavored cake. And this is going to be a spice bundt cake. Now, I'm actually kind of excited to make this one because it's got a lot of ingredients that you find around Christmas time, like cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves, all that stuff going into it. So let's see how this one turns out and let's get to making it.
In total, you will need 3 cups of all-purpose flour. I'm starting with half of that to a large bowl and then adding in my spice mix, which consists of 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, half a teaspoon of nutmeg, a 1/4 teaspoon of fresh ground cloves because I'm fancy, and 1 teaspoon of ginger powder. And use fresh ground stuff where you can because in my opinion there's more flavor. So adding in the next half of my flour. To that, add 1 teaspoon of baking soda, followed up by 3 teaspoons of baking powder. Now give this a quick whisk until everything is thoroughly combined. Separately to a stand mixer, add in 3/4 of a cup of crisco shortening. Go ahead and mix this around a little bit to kind of break it down. Then add in 1½ cups of granulated sugar slowly while continuously whisking to kind of beat these 2 items together. And next we are adding in 1 cup of tomato soup. Yes, I'm just as concerned as you are because this recipe is actually from the Great Depression and they use tomato soup in some of their cakes. I'm gonna give this a try and let you guys know how it is, so just bear with me. To that, add 3/4 of a cup of water and then follow that up with 4 large eggs that have been brought up to room temperature. Go ahead and mix this together. The shortening will probably stick here to the side, so go ahead and mix that around with your spatula. Then question your soup cake and all of your hopes and dreams. Then slowly add in your spice cake mix that you just created. And I'm just kidding, guys. This tomato soup is perfectly fine to be adding in, and it just brings a little bit of acidity, and the actual tomato flavor is not even present in the cake. And there's actually a pretty cool history behind it, so look it up if you feel like it. And if you're not into that stuff, just go ahead and mix your cake together so we can get along to enjoying a nice Christmas spice cake. And since we're being more fancy here, we can go ahead and smooth this out with the spatula, give it a few taps to get out any air bubbles, and cook this in an oven that has been preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit and cook for 50 to 55 minutes until a toothpick inserted comes out clean. For the frosting, add in 8 ounces of softened cream cheese. Give that a quick mix to break it down. Followed up by 1 egg yolk, and sadly mine broke, but if this happens, just scrape it out with a spoon, no big deal. Slowly add in 1 cup of powdered sugar. Be sure to do this slowly because you want this to thoroughly incorporate. 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, followed up with 7 tablespoons of heavy whipping cream. Mix this on medium for 30 seconds. Don't mix on high because we don't want a bunch of air incorporated into this. Now my cake is smelling extra spicy. I'm going to go ahead and flip this out just like the last time. Remove the dome and then look at this cake. It looks absolutely amazing. Pro tip, if you have one, use a fan to go ahead and cool this cake completely. It'll speed up the process. Now I frosted this cake just like I did the last one. Then I also mixed up some red and green icing with about a 1/4 cup of powdered sugar and slowly add in at a tablespoon at a time of milk until you reach a nice thick consistency because you want this to adhere. And then just add in food coloring until you get a nice bright red or green, and just drizzle this across your cakes. Once again, not the best at decorating, but I figured this would add a little bit of Christmas theme to these cakes. And here is the spice cake. It looks absolutely amazing. I will note that you can add in nuts and raisins to this, but I didn't want to do that because some people are allergic to nuts and some people are freaked out by raisins. But here's the red velvet cake. It looks really cool with the green drizzle on top, and I thought this one actually looked better in my opinion. So there you have it, guys. These two cakes are absolutely amazing. I highly recommend making both, but I did like the red velvet better in my opinion.
Alright, so let's discuss these cakes here a little bit. So the red velvet cake was exactly what you would expect from a red velvet cake. It came in clutch, and the icing on it, I actually thought the icing on the spice cake was going to be better, but I ended up really liking the red velvet cake better overall, primarily due to the icing. The spice cake was good, but it wasn't as moist in my opinion, and the icing just didn't really have as much going for it. I do think a way to upgrade this would be to add some spices to the icing, and if you want to, you could add the nuts in it and the raisins, and that might give it a little bit more depth of flavor.
And for the spice cake, I will definitely leave a description down below for how much nuts you need and raisins if you feel like adding them.
With that being said, guys, please be on the lookout for part 2 of this series. I will be making eggnog, hot chocolate, apple cider, Christmas cookies. We just got a whole lot of stuff coming up. I don't know what order I'm going to bake all this in, but be on the lookout for the video next week for part 2 of this series. I really appreciate it, guys. Hit that like button down below. A lot of time and effort went into making this video, and I really appreciate if you guys hit that like button. And please consider subscribing to my channel if you want to see more videos like this. And with that being said, guys, I will see you on part 2.